It's October, and I'm about to show you something that's gonna blow your mind. Are you ready? That's right. Winter has arrived where I live.
Okay, so even though Mother Nature is a little bit ahead of the game, a lot of the stores, the dollar stores, Michael's and that, they still haven't caught up to Mother Nature. I think it's safe to say that Mother Nature and I and you have gotten a head start on the holiday season. So because of that, I think what we're going to do today is another Christmas thrift flip video. I'm sure these are going to help inspire you and give you some ideas on how you too can decorate your home using inexpensive thrift store items and a few Dollar Tree pieces to make yourself beautiful high-end Christmas decor. I found these oversized embroidery hoops at the thrift store and was so excited, and then I noticed that they were missing their inner hoop, which was unfortunate. It would have been definitely a much better find had it had both pieces, but regardless, for $1.99 for two, like a buck each, I knew I could easily transform these into something really special. Okay, so now there was two hoops, so you get like 2 for 1, plus I've thrown in a bonus Dollar Tree DIY using those Christmas bells that you can find every year at Dollar Tree.
Okay, just to get started, I'm going to show you what I mean. You can see here that there's 2 hoops in the embroidery hoops, and these ones come with 1. But no biggie for this DIY, you're just going to need one of those embroidery hoops and some drop cloth. It serves me right, I got this drop cloth at Dollar Tree. And to start with, you're going to want to find the edge of the drop cloth that actually has been sewn, and then just make sure that you measure it against your embroidery hoop so that you have enough of that drop cloth to cover the entire front. Once you've measured out your drop cloth, just take a pair of scissors and cut off a piece that will fit. Lay the drop cloth across the front of your embroidery hoop and flip the hoop over so that you're facing the back side. And using a pair of scissors, cut your drop cloth so that you end up with enough cloth to cover the hoop plus a little bit on the inside of the rim that you can hot glue down. Start by gluing the center part of the drop cloth down into place and then work your way up to each end of the drop cloth so that you make sure that there's a straight line in the front where the seam is. It's important to be neat on the front side of this, but you don't really need to be as neat on the back side. So just make sure that you're gluing all of the pieces of cloth, drop cloth down with your glue gun and pulling it as taut as possible. Now I've searched high and low for this footage, but I cannot find the footage where I glue a second piece to the back of the embroidery hoop. That's all you need to do. Just take another piece of drop cloth and glue it to the back of the embroidery hoop so that you have a front and a back. Glue the inside edges of the drop cloth to the inside edge of your embroidery hoop. I had these stencils from Dollarama and I decided to use those because I really like the fleur de lis, but if you wanted to, you could always use this Let It Snow stencil from Dollar Tree and just use that bottom part with the scalloped edge instead. Hindsight being 2020, I should have done this first, but alas, here we are. But if you're going to recreate this, do the design before you glue the drop cloth to the embroidery hoop. Now you could use any color paint that you wish, but I decided that I wanted to go with oatmeal paint because I want to use this piece not just for Christmas, but for other seasons as well. So going in with the chalk paint color of your choice and a little stencil brush and the stencil itself, just carefully stencil on your design. Okay, Dollar Tree has these pine picks that are absolutely gloriously full, but I am not a fan of the yellowy color, so I needed to get rid of that before I could use it in the DIY. So I went in with a little bit of Folk Art 1 Decor paint in aged pine, and with a foam brush just applied a little bit of that green color to the yellowy parts on the pine picks. It's a bit messy, but that's part of the fun, and this is going to make them look so much more realistic. While the chalk paint on those pine picks are drying, I always keep every little bits and pieces of floral foam that I have left over, and I just took a few of these little pieces and stuck them inside of the embroidery hoop. And I took those pine picks and I measured them against the embroidery hoop, lining up where I wanted them to sit, and then using a pair of wire clippers just clip those down so that they fit perfectly inside of the hoop. To get them to stay in place, just gently press them into that floral foam. To finish everything off and for a way to attach this, I decided to use some snowflake wired ribbon that I bought on sale last year from Michael's, and I just simply attached this to the center part of the upper part of the hoop and then hot glued the ribbon together, folding it over a couple of times just to give it a little bit more strength. I don't know if it really does, but I tell myself it does, so we're gonna go with that. And there you go, it's completely finished. What do you think? This next DIY is a bit of a bonus DIY. We're just going to use, like I said, those Dollar Tree bells that you can find almost every year, but buy them when you see them because they sell out fast. This year's the pine cone embellishment was just glued to the bell, but this year they've used a wire to attach it, so just unravel that and remove the embellishment. You're going to want some black spray paint, preferably in matte, and you're going to want to give each of these bells a coat or two of the spray paint using nice even spray paint layers. It's better to go in light and keep layering than to spray and end up with goops. Okay, you can get these makeup sponges for next to nothing, and they are a crafter's dream. So you're going to want to use those with a little bit of Art Minds antiquing wax, and you're going to want to apply that to your bell. Just pouncing it up lightly. You're going to want some of the black to show through, but basically cover most of the bell with that antiquing wax. And then let that slightly dry. Now next I'm going in with a little bit of a light silver, but you could really use any light silver color that you like. And then once the two colors have dried, you're going to want to grab yourself a little bit of decoupage and a fan brush and apply that decoupage anywhere that you think that rust would naturally form. Okay, this is by far my favorite way and I think the easiest way to recreate faux rust. So you're going to want to go in with a little bit of cinnamon. I just bought some cheap cinnamon from Superstore, and then sprinkle that generously onto your bell. Now personally, I find it best to do this on a paper towel. That way you can later on, after you're done the sprinkling, you can just shake off any of your extra cinnamon into a cup and then use it on the next bell. Once your bell is completely covered with that cinnamon, just go in with a nice dry fluffy brush and wipe away any of the excess. To keep that cinnamon in place, you're going to want to go in with a little bit of Folk Art Select Seal matte finishing spray, both bells a nice light coat, and then let that dry. Now if you find that there's a little bit of clotting along the rim, especially of the bell, just use a little bit of Kleenex and wipe that away. And there you have it, but I'm actually not going to show you the finishing look because we're going to use this in the next DIY. Okay, once you've completely rustified those bells, the next step begins. Super simple. You're just going to want to take some twine. I got mine, I think, from Dollar Tree, and thread it through the top of the bell. Tie that into a knot. You're going to want to do this to both bells, making the rope length a little bit different so that one bell sits higher than the other. And simply using the twine, tie the bells to your embroidery hoop and trim off the ends. Now I had a bunch of greenery left over that I had purchased over the last couple of years at Michael's, and I had these two that they were like pine cone, pine sticks that just don't work with anything. So I decided to tape these together with just a bit of Scotch tape. And then I used a bit of the Dollar Tree pine picks, and again I just arranged those around the original pine boughs and taped those into place as well. And then I had some pieces of this ferny greenery that I think I bought during the summer months at Dollar Tree, but they had a bit of like a juniper look to them. So I added those to the arrangement, and again, just simply using the Scotch tape, taped it into place. Lastly, this year Dollar Tree has these white berries with these gloriously frosted leaves, and so I just using some wire clippers clipped those down individually, tucked those into the arrangement, and again, Scotch tape. Could definitely make this arrangement a bit more permanent by using something a bit stronger than Scotch tape, but I plan on reusing these hoops, or at least this one hoop, so I decided to go in with a temporary measure. For a little bit of extra hold, just apply some hot glue onto your tape and then wrap some I went with just thick twine rope and wrapped this around in the spaces between where the two arrangements meet, and then hot glued the end into place. And then I did hot glue this into place at the top of the hoop. And for a little extra security, I also tied this down with a piece of twine. To finish everything off, I went back in with that snowflake wired ribbon from Michael's, and again, using a little bit of hot glue, attached the ribbon together. I actually felt that this looked a little sparse, so I decided to beef up what was already there with the pine cones, and I added some pine cones that I had on hand with just a little bit of hot glue. And then to give it that little extra festive touch, Dollar Tree has these sparkly frosted pine cones, and you just, using your wire clippers, just clip them off, unwrap the wire around them, and then adhere them with a bit of hot glue to the arrangement. There you have it, a second holiday decor piece using old discarded embroidery hoops.
Okay, fell in love with the sled. Again, it's about the piece and the shape. It's not about the color. But I definitely wasn't feeling this like 1990s orange stain look that covered every decor piece and every furniture piece in the 90s. But I knew that a little bit of sandpaper and some simple paint techniques was going to change up the look of this piece and bring it into something that is current and definitely better suited for farmhouse decor. Oh, and just like I did with the hoops, I have a little bonus thrift flip idea for using either with your sled piece or separately on its own.
Okay, here she is in all her 1990 glory. She's not bad. She's not the prettiest girl at the dance, but she'll do. She just needs a little bit of TLC. To start off with, that TLC comes with a bit of sandpaper. So I used 150 grit, I want to say, to do this. No, maybe it was 100 grit. I think I started with 150 and found that 100 grit worked better. I just sanded the whole entire piece, inside, outside, rim, the treads, you name it, it got sanded. Here's a little tip for sanding in those hard to reach spaces, like along the skids and that. Just wrap an emery board in some sandpaper, nice and tight, and then use that to sand the difficult areas. I wanted to give this whole piece a bit of a light gray wash, so I went in with a little bit of French linen, folk art French linen, and I mixed that with some water to make a really thin wash, and then using a big thick brush, I just applied that wash to the entire piece. Again, inside, outside, rim, you name it, it got the wash. I let the wash dry completely overnight, and then the next day went in with a big thick chippy brush and a bit of Art Mind's white chalk paint and just applied that all over the sled, giving it a nice worn distressed look. Blend everything in with a dry towel and then just go back and forth between the chalk paint and the blending with the towel. And if at any point you find you go a little heavy-handed with the white paint, no biggie, just use a bit of sandpaper to sand that away. Now I'm not going to show you this finishing look because I'm going to show you that after the next bonus DIY. Okay, bonus DIY number 2. I found these white enamel mugs at the thrift store and knew that I had to have them in my life. I just wasn't quite sure, still not quite sure what I want to do with them, so they're going to get a temporary fix. Give them that temporary fix, we're just going to use a few more of those pine picks from Dollar Tree. Simply bent down the wire pick so that it would fit inside the cup, collected them into a cluster, pop them into the cup, et voila, it's done. Here's the finishing look, both sled and Christmas tree cup. What do you think?
One of the easiest things to find at the thrift store are like old cake pans or pie pans, and I came across these really retro looking ones that even had like a little slider that went along the bottom, I guess, of the pie plate. Okay, and I know this sounds kooky, but you can use these easily found kitchen items and transform them into beautiful holiday decor. Let me show you how.
And there you have it, the simple, humble pie plate. Retro pie plate. I just think these look so cool. But I'm gonna give them a little bit of Art Mind's white chalk paint treatment. And I'm just gonna paint the inside of the pie plate. I'm also going to paint the sides and the upper rim, but I'm going to leave the outer edges as is. And once that first coat was allowed to dry overnight, I went in and did a second coat, let that dry, and then went in and did a third coat. Again, inside only, I wanted to leave the outside as is. To recreate this DIY, you're going to also need a package of Dollar Tree faux Christmas trees and some of their wooden Christmas snowflake cutouts. By hot gluing a few of the wooden snowflakes onto the inner back of the pie plate. Then going back in with that hot glue gun, apply a generous dollop of hot glue to the bottom of each of the Christmas trees and then carefully adhere those into place. Now the nice thing about these Christmas trees is that even though you're putting it on a rounded rim, because they have a wire center, you can just bend them so that they fit to look like they're perfectly standing upright. Again, I probably should have done this step first, but I didn't, so I went in with some sandpaper and just scuffed up those edges to give it a worn look. Next, you want to take some twine, and this pie plate came with that piece that kind of slides around, so I just threaded the twine into that and then tied it a couple of times into a tight knot. Then I had these leftover clips, not one to throw anything away. I can't remember where they came from, but basically you just need some clips. And I hot glued one of the wooden snowflakes to each of these clips, and then I used a little bit more hot glue on the back of each of the clips and adhered that to the twine rope, spacing it out nicely. You're going to want some room because in a minute you're going to see we're going to attach some Christmas cards to this. I think this is a beautiful way to display your Christmas cards. But tell me, what do you think?
Okay, this thrift flip is a perfect example of why you should pay less attention to the cosmetic details on a decor piece and instead pay attention to the shape of the piece, because that's really the most important part. The cosmetic stuff you can change up. When I saw this vase, it was the shape. I loved her shape. But I wasn't a huge fan of the silver leaf technique that they'd used on it, to the silver leaf technique that they'd used to decorate it originally. It was just a bit too blingy for me. But I knew that a simple paint technique that I've used before would easily transform this piece and make it perfect for our home for the holidays.
This little beauty gave me a whole lot of trouble. So to start with, I just spray painted it black and then went in with some white chalk paint. But as you can see, because I didn't take off the original covering, it gave it like a crackly look that I was not a fan of. I wasn't a fan of this shiny silver look, which is why I wanted to change it up in the first place. It definitely took some patience and a Cricut scraper spatula, but I managed to scrape away the original paint, the spray paint I'd put on, and the white chalk paint to give myself a clean surface to work on. I'd removed all those layers of paint. I headed back outside and gave it another coat of the flat black spray paint. This time it wasn't going to be an issue. And once the spray paint had completely dried, I went in again with a bit of that white chalk paint. This took 3 coats of chalk paint, letting it dry thoroughly in between each coat. Now, I would actually recommend you do this a little bit earlier and maybe wet distress it. I left mine a little bit too long, so I had to go in with some sandpaper and a wet cloth. Just lightly distress the areas on the vase where it would naturally wear out. Any point you go through both layers of paint to the original glass, don't panic. Just take a little bit of black matte chalk paint and a tiny paintbrush and just paint it back on. And now that this beautiful faux enamel vase is completely painted, I just filled it with a bunch of cinnamon pine cones that I got for sale at Michael's. They put them on sale every year, and I added a little twinkle light pack inside of the vase. I just left it on. You can get those with the timer. Wrapped it around the pine cones, and there you have it, a simple and beautiful home decor piece for the holidays.
Well, that's it for today's thrift. Well, that's it for today's Christmas thrift. Well, that's it for today's Christmas thrift. Well, that's it for today's. Well, that's it for today's Christmas thrift flips. Christmas thrift flip. Flips. Okay. Pull yourself together, Jen. Well, that's it for today's Christmas thrift flips. If you enjoyed those, make sure that you subscribe, give me a thumbs up. If you hit the notification bell, it'll let you know the next time I upload. Oh, and you might enjoy these.